Everyone said he was the perfect guy. But I watched him destroy her from the inside out. One quiet word, one rule, one bruise at a time. I don't even know when I started to hate him. Maybe hate isn't the right word. But it's close enough. It's that slow, crawling sickness you feel in your stomach every time someone's name comes up. And your body just knows before your brain does. His name is Ethan. My sister's boyfriend. Or whatever he is to her now. Partner, soulmate, person who ruins her life in slow motion. Take your pick. They've been together 3 years. Which, in my opinion, is about 2 years too long. When they first met, I was happy for her. Genuinely. She'd just gotten out of this rough breakup. And she was fragile in that way people get when they've been told they're too much one too many times. Then Ethan showed up. Calm, soft-spoken, with that fake humility that looks like confidence if you squint hard enough. The kind of guy who says, "I'm not like other guys," and actually believes it. I remember their first dinner at our parents' house. He complimented my mom's cooking like he was being filmed for a Hallmark commercial, offered to help with dishes, and laughed at my dad's corny jokes. He was perfect. Too perfect. And I swear that's the first time I felt it. The itch under my ribs, the quiet alarm bell that no one else seemed to hear. Over the next few months, little things started happening. My sister Lena used to call me almost every day. She'd tell me about work, about her students, about how she was learning to cook. Then one week she didn't call. And when I texted, she said she'd been busy. The next time we talked, Ethan was in the background. She spoke quieter than usual, like her voice had to pass through him before it could reach me. I noticed the small shifts. Her clothes changed. She stopped wearing bright colors. She'd always loved this yellow sundress. She said it made her feel like sunlight. Now she only wore black, beige, muted things. I once joked about it and she just said, "Ethan likes when I look more natural." Natural. Like she wasn't allowed to exist in color anymore. I tried bringing it up gently once. We were getting coffee and she kept checking her phone every few minutes. I asked, "Everything okay?" She said, "Yeah, he just worries if I don't text back right away." And the way she said it, not annoyed, not scared, just matter of fact like this was love. I said, "That doesn't sound healthy, Lena." She looked at me like I'd just insulted her religion. "You don't know him like I do." That's the line that's been stuck in my head for months. You don't know him like I do. She's right, I don't. But I know what fear looks like when it's pretending to be loyalty. Last Thanksgiving they came over again. It was weird. My mom kept trying to get Lena to help in the kitchen, but Ethan followed her everywhere. Like literally followed her. When she went to get the wine glasses, he trailed behind. When she went to the bathroom, he waited by the door. He'd touch her back in this possessive, casual way, like a hand that said you belong to me without words. At one point I caught her laughing at something I said. A real laugh, the kind that used to shake her shoulders. Then Ethan leaned in and whispered something, and her face went blank. She excused herself. Later I found her in the hallway, just staring at her phone. I asked if she was okay and she said, "He just gets anxious sometimes. I don't want to upset him." Upset him. The way she said it, small, rehearsed. Like she'd said it 100 times before. When they left that night, my mom sighed and said, "They're such a cute couple." My dad nodded, said Ethan was a respectful young man. I wanted to scream. I told him I thought something was off, that Ethan gave me a bad feeling. Mom brushed it off, said I was being protective. Dad said Lena was old enough to make her own decisions. And I get it, she's 28. She's an adult. But I've seen what he's doing to her, piece by piece. He's not hitting her, not yet at least, but he's shrinking her down until there's nothing left to hit. I tried one last time to talk to her about it. It was after Christmas, when she came over alone to drop off some gifts she'd forgotten. She looked thinner, tired. I said, "Lena, I'm worried about you." She froze, then forced a smile. "Why? You're not yourself anymore. You don't laugh, you don't go out, you're always on your phone checking in with him. That's not normal." She stared at me and her voice cracked when she said, "He loves me, okay? He gets jealous sometimes, but that's because he cares." I wanted to shake her. I wanted to grab her shoulders and say, "That's not love. That's control." But I didn't. I just stood there, watching her shrink into the lie she's been taught to defend. When she left, I cried in the kitchen. I don't even know why. Frustration, guilt, helplessness. All of it. Because what do you do when someone you love is drowning, but every time you throw them a rope, they hand it back to the person pushing them under. After that Christmas visit, I couldn't stop thinking about Lena. I kept replaying the way she smiled through fear, like she was wearing a mask that had glued itself to her face. I tried to tell myself to back off. She's an adult, she has to make her own decisions. But there's a part of me that won't shut up, the part that keeps seeing the bruises he hasn't left yet, the ones hidden under words and rules. It was late January when things escalated. I was at work, grading papers, when Lena texted me. Just a single message. "Can you come over? Please." My stomach dropped. I didn't ask questions. I left my apartment in under 10 minutes, half forgetting my coat in the winter cold, my shoes untied. I got to her apartment, and the moment I stepped inside I knew. Smelled like tension. Not just the kind of quiet tension that lives in empty rooms, but thick, heavy, like smoke that's been left to fester. And there she was, sitting on the couch, staring at the floor. She didn't look at me. Her hands were shaking. I said, "Lena." She flinched like she didn't recognize my voice at first. Then she finally looked up, and I saw it. The fear behind her eyes, the part of her that hadn't been allowed to breathe in months. "Ethan," she started, her voice barely audible. He did something last night." My heart slammed against my ribs. I knelt beside her. "What happened?" She swallowed, tears pooling. He said if I ever left him, he'd make sure I couldn't see my friends or family ever again. And her voice broke. "And then he slapped me." Slap. Just like that, the word echoed in my head. Slap. Not hit, not beat, just slapped. And yet somehow the weight of it felt heavier than anything else I've ever known. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to scream at him, I wanted to shake Lena. I wanted to disappear into the floor because the world felt suddenly crueler than I thought it could be. You need to leave," I said finally. My voice was trembling. "You can't stay there. Not like this. Not anymore." She shook her head violently. "I can't. He says he'll ruin me. He says no one will believe me." And that's when I realized the worst part. She believes him. We spent hours talking that night. She told me about the small manipulations, the gaslighting, the constant guilt. About how he made her feel like she was the problem, the one who needed fixing. About how he'd check her phone, monitor her texts, and quietly humiliate her in front of friends. I sat there listening, feeling helpless in a way that burns through your bones. I wanted to save her, pull her out, take her away to somewhere safe. But I couldn't. Not without her choosing to fight. The next day I went to our parents. I told them everything, the slap, the control, the emotional abuse. My mom looked at me like I was overreacting. "Are you sure you're not exaggerating?" she asked. My dad just sighed and said, "We raised her to make her own decisions. If she wants to be with him, she has to be with him." I felt my chest tighten. That's when I understood. They don't see it. Or they refuse to. And if they don't, then I'm alone in this. So I tried another approach. I started leaving little things for Lena. Articles about emotional abuse, notes in her purse, links to hotlines. I texted her when I knew she'd be alone. "I'm here if you want to talk. You're not trapped. You deserve to feel safe." She responded sometimes a little, other times nothing. She's trapped, but she's also clinging to hope that maybe, somehow, love is supposed to hurt. That's the line he's been feeding her for years. Then came the night he came over uninvited. I'd gone over to check on her after she didn't answer her phone for hours. Ethan was there, pacing in her kitchen like he owned the space. His voice was calm, smooth, polite, but every sentence dripped with venom. "Who's this?" he asked, and I could see him measuring me, assessing the threat I posed. "She called me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I wanted to make sure she was okay. His smile was thin, dangerous. "I see. And you think you can just check on her? On my girlfriend?" I realized then that fear wasn't just something he instilled in Lena. He carried it himself, a weapon, and he was wielding it with precision. I left that night with Lena clinging to my arm. "Please," she whispered, "don't make him mad." And I realized this isn't just emotional abuse anymore. This is danger. After that night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lena sitting on the couch, her hands trembling, Ethan's shadow looming over her like some dark cloud that never lifted. I kept thinking about what I could do, what should be done, but the answer wasn't simple. There's no rule book for saving someone who won't admit they're in danger. Someone who keeps convincing themselves that the cage is actually a home. I decided I had to act. Not wildly, not in a way that would make things worse, but strategically. I started documenting everything Lena told me, every text, every weird interaction, every time he isolated her from friends or family. I made folders on my phone, backups in my email, screenshots with timestamps. I felt like a detective in a case that only I could see unfolding. One Friday evening I went over again. Lena opened the door, eyes red, her hair falling in uneven strands. She didn't say anything. She just stepped aside and let me in. I noticed the bruises immediately. Faint, purplish, crawling up her forearm. My stomach turned. "Lena," I whispered. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice cracked. I wanted to reach out, touch her, tell her it was going to be okay, but she flinched when I moved. And then Ethan walked into the room. He didn't even look at me. Just at her, standing close enough that she couldn't move without brushing against him. "I thought you'd be gone by now," he said casually. Froze. Every instinct screamed at me to do something stupid, to yell, to grab Lena, to push him out. But I forced myself to stay calm. Calm was the only weapon I had right now. "I'm leaving soon," I said evenly. "Just making sure she's okay before I go." He smiled at me, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I don't think you understand your sister," he said. "She's mine. She's happy." I felt my chest tighten. That word "mine" cut through me. "She's not yours," I said. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. "She's a person, not a possession." He leaned closer, voice low, quiet enough that only I could hear it. "Be careful what you say. Some things have consequences." I stepped back, realizing I had no real ground here. This wasn't about reason. This wasn't about logic. This was about power. After he left, Lena sank into the couch, burying her face in her hands. I knelt beside her, trembling. "We have to do something," I said softly. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't go to the police. He'll lie. He'll make me look crazy. And if I leave, he'll find me. He'll hurt me. Or worse." I took her hands, desperate. "You're not alone. I'm here. We can figure this out together. There are ways, Lena. We can make a plan." She shook her head. "I'm scared, okay? I'm so scared." And that's when I realized something terrifying. Fear had become her world. Every decision she made, every hesitation, every second of silence was built around it. And Ethan had built that cage. Over the next few weeks, I slowly built a network. A friend who's a lawyer gave me advice on restraining orders. Another friend suggested shelters that could provide temporary housing without leaving a trace. I even started keeping a bag ready for her, in case she wanted to leave suddenly. Clothes, toiletries, money. A lifeline packed in secrecy. But planning alone wasn't enough. She had to want it. And the truth. I didn't know if she ever would. Then came the night of the argument. It was a small thing. Ethan accused her of talking to me too much, of undermining him. It escalated quickly, like gasoline on a match. He yelled, slammed doors, and for the first time, I saw Lena flinch as if the air itself might hit her. I couldn't stay silent. I called my mom, urgently saying, "You need to come. Now." She hesitated. Probably didn't know how bad it was, but she came. My dad followed, confusion written across his face. When they walked in, Ethan froze. He hadn't expected an audience, hadn't expected anyone to challenge him. That pause was all I needed. I took Lena's hand and led her out. We didn't speak. Words were useless. Once we were outside, breathing the cold air, Lena finally broke down. Sobbing, shaking, apologizing for everything she shouldn't have had to apologize for. I held her, whispering the only thing I could. "It's not your fault. None of this is your fault." That night she stayed with me. For the first time in years I saw a spark of her old self. Tired, yes, scared, yes, but hers. It's not over. Not by a long shot. Ethan is still out there. He still has his hold on her in ways I can't always see. But that night I realized something crucial. Lena's cage had cracks. And if I stayed vigilant, if I stayed patient, if I kept her believing she deserved better, maybe, just maybe, one day she'd walk out of it for good. The next few weeks were surreal. Lena stayed with me for a while, and it felt like living with a ghost of who she used to be. She laughed quietly sometimes, the way she used to when we were kids making up ridiculous stories in the backyard. But there were still shadows, long and stubborn, lingering behind her eyes. We made a plan. A real one this time. I helped her reach out to a counselor who specialized in abusive relationships, contacted a local shelter that could give her a safe place if she needed it, and quietly warned a few close friends. Everything was mapped. Exits, routes, people she could call at any hour. But the hardest part wasn't logistics. It was convincing her she deserved to use them. The morning she finally decided to leave, Ethan was waiting outside her apartment. Predictable, controlling, like he had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his mind. He smiled that fake smile at her, tried to speak gently, tried to twist everything into guilt and fear. I stayed in the car a few blocks away, phone in hand, ready to drive her anywhere. Lena didn't hesitate. She grabbed her bag, stepped past him without a word, and walked to the car. He called her name. She didn't turn around. It was the first real victory in months. Small, shaky, miraculous victory. Driving away, she finally let herself cry openly. I didn't say anything. I just let her. And in that silence I realized something important. Sometimes love isn't about convincing someone to leave. It's about being steady enough, patient enough, and unwavering enough that they finally see their own strength. The following days were tense. Ethan called her, texted her, tried to manipulate her through social media. But we had prepared for this. She blocked him, changed her numbers, limited her online presence. And slowly, the color began to return to her. A hint of yellow in her scarf, laughter slipping out of her mouth unprompted, the way she made little sarcastic jokes again, the small things that made her her. We didn't speak much about the past. Sometimes she'd glance at me, eyes wide, like she was still measuring if I was real or just another illusion she could cling to. I just nodded, smiled softly, let her come to terms with it in her own way. I called our parents one night weeks later. Mom was quiet on the line. I could tell she had been thinking. I didn't chastise her for ignoring the signs before. I just asked her to be there for Lena now, to listen, to believe. She agreed. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. And me. I'm exhausted. My chest still tightens when I think about how close we came to losing her to fear. How long she suffered in silence. But there's relief too. Watching her reclaim herself piece by piece reminds me why I couldn't give up. I know the road ahead is long. Trauma doesn't vanish overnight. Some nights she still wakes up trembling, hyper-aware of shadows. But she's building walls of her own choosing now. Walls that protect instead of trap. And I'll be there, steady, unwavering, until she knows, deep in her bones, that she's free. Sometimes I wonder if I did enough. I replay every moment, every choice, every missed signal. I still feel that creeping guilt, that could I have done more? But then I see her, reading a book in sunlight, humming softly to herself, and I remember, she's choosing life again. That's more than I could have hoped for when it all began. I've learned something I didn't know I needed to learn. You can't force someone to escape a cage, no matter how obvious it is to you. You can only hand them the key, over and over, and wait for the moment they finally turn it themselves. And when they do, you hold your breath because freedom feels fragile at first. But it's real.